So I was having a lovely day because the clocks have gone forward and the sun has come out and it was glorious. The sun, I feel energized and it's spring and it's wonderful. And I just feel like you're going to ruin my day.
I mean, a little bit because I think that while it is very, very, very English of you to automatically resort to starting things out in any conversation by just talking about how nice the weather is, I have questions about things like book talk and you know what are your opinions on dragon dick, Mike?
Uh, so, yeah.
What about fairy porn?
Borag Thung,
Have you
Flitz,
ever heard of a blueberry fetish? Michael.
prepare yourselves for this episode.
Welcome to In Orbit every Wednesday.
Get 2000 AD now. Get 2000.
Get it right, Michael.
Borag Thung, Flitz. This is In Orbit every Wednesday. I'm your host, Molch-R. This is your close.
What's her name?
I fell at
What?
the first hurdle.
You?
Your host,
Beautiful.
who is enjoying every second of this, I might add, Chloe, and we are joined by writer and artist extraordinaire, Torunn Grønbekk. And you know what? You can mock how I say your name all you want.
That was perfect.
I'm not even going to attempt to do it specially just because it's you. But we are here to talk about Battle Action issue number 8, which is out now and features Torunn with Patrick Goddard on Nina Petrova and the Angels of Death, which I mean does what it says on the tin, and I'd like to think.
Well, I mean, I think we haven't done anything sort of like we didn't do like Nina in Space or something. I haven't pitched that one to Oliver yet. So yeah, it's pretty much. But I will say that I'm sort of oddly happy about it.
Oddly happy.
The thing is, this character tortures me. I spend more time on these 14 pages than 9 other scripts combined, and it's so odd. But I just want her to be right. I want to get it right, and I don't think I have the same sort of intense. I need to nail it with any other character that I'm writing. So
why is that?
Well, first of all, I love her. She's one of the. I think she was one of the first sort of comic heroines I ever saw, and I was very into sort of war stories and military history as a kid. And there were obviously no women in those comics, which was fine. You don't expect there to be. But when she appeared, she was just glorious. I wrote something about this in the last issue I did. And there is something to the fact, like the first time I saw her, I think it was the 1980 issue, like number 8, 1980. And there's a panel there where Johnny and Nina just carries like a load between them. And there's just something so beautiful about the fact that she gets to carry her load. Like it's just, she's there, competent and doing things. And it is maybe a little bit sad that that's not a common thing, but it's not though. So to me, it was sort of like, oh, this is everything I love in one giant morsel of greatness. And it was my first introduction to the Night Witches, which I had no idea was a thing at all.
I mean, it is a fantastic bit of history. Explain a little bit about what the Night Witches were, because it's amazing.
Well, the Night Witches were a Soviet bomber regiment of women, and the thing is, like in the Soviet Union, they had a lot of like aircraft were a sort of hobby. So there were a bunch of female pilots at the time, and there were a bunch of pilots that were sort of they were already very good pilots, and then the war broke out, and they obviously wanted to fly. And that was a little sort of like they weren't immediately allowed to do so, but after a while, they started the bomber regiment that's famously called the Night Witches because they got the Po-2s, which are these awful. They're not awful. I'm going to talk about the Po-2s later when we get to the fucking cover, but they're basically a paper plane. No, it's a rickety little shit plane. It's loud. It's slow. It can't really carry a great load. So the only way they could sort of get it to do what they needed it to do was to cut the engine mid-flight and just glide over the Germans and drop their like 400 kilos of bombs or something, and then go back and do it all over again. And it is it's a stunning piece of sort of aviation history that I feel like should have been a bigger deal. And it's and in many ways, like I talked about this to Garth because we lost the last Night Witch, Galina, in August last year, and it felt like a sort of odd, sort of like, oh, that was it. It's like that's all we could do. But it's sort of fascinating to know that at least Garth has maybe been the one to do like Battle Action, and Garth and his together has probably made the Night Witches more known than anyone else, except the Swedish metal band who did the Night Witches song.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah.
I don't know the one. Oh, I wish I remember it right now because it's a mediocre song, but it's a great band.
Well, the character itself, obviously created by Tom Tully and Joe Calhoun, and she was introduced within the strip of Johnny Red, who, you know, a character. For those who don't know Johnny Red, basically a British Spitfire pilot, a Hurricane pilot, excuse me, who.
Careful.
I'm going to get for that one right there. Who gets stranded, blown off course, whatever, behind Soviet lines, and basically teams up with the Soviets to take on the Nazis in the Eastern Front. Fantastic long-running strip in Battle and then Battle Action. And Nina was introduced as one of the supporting characters in that. What I guess from Garth's point of view and your point of view, why actually was it important to break her out into her own story?
Well, I suppose like to me it was just important because she was such an important character to me, and I assume that she would be an important character to a lot of other people. And she was one of the first, if not the first, sort of action heroines in British comics, I would assume. Not like I realized that my knowledge of sort of British anthology comics is sort of sorely lacking, because I've read the collections and don't tell Mike, but I pirated a lot of the comics like in the late 90s because it was the only way to get them.
Yeah.
Mike.
I'm right here.
But that was the complete stories, right? So I just sort of, picked and chose what I wanted to read. But anyway, she was one of the first ones, right? And I think that she, what they did before Garth took over was to create a really great character, and she doesn't have her tits out, like she's just like a good, complete human character, which was rare back in the days. It's still rare in many ways to get like a full-fledged person in a female character. And you have to ask Garth why he chose to sort of pull that character out and make her own strip, but I'm very happy he did. And I'm even happier that I get to write her now.
Wait, let's talk about the cover. You mentioned the cover. Now, this is, I mean, Chloe, your reaction speaks volumes.
It's gorgeous. Like, it is shockingly pretty.
It makes me like I because the thing is, Oliver and Garth sort of asked me to do this back in like New York Comic Con 2023, I think. So it's a long time ago. And since then, and I do mean since then, I've been sort of trying to figure out who she is in the most sort of pretentious artist way possible. In the most sort of like, oh, I'm going to do a deep dive into sort of Russian bone structure to see what, blah, blah, like all of that nonsense. And it's been a joy. Like I've enjoyed every moment of it, but I was sort of freaking out about it because I wasn't sure that, like, I felt like it was correct. And I sent it off, and I didn't like. Oliver is sort of, he was very like, oh, it's fine, we're going to print it. I'm like, okay. And then
That's what every artist wants to hear. It's fine.
yeah,
It's fine.
we had no choice. The printer was due. We're already late, Torunn. We're just going to print it. And then the response was just, it was mind blowing. I'm so, it seemed to have sort of, well, the endless work seemed to have sort of paid off. I hope. I don't fucking know. The thing is, what I wanted to was to have like Nina and then the Po-2 in the background. And what really tripped me up, because I paint a lot of aircraft and it's usually not a problem to me. But this fucking little thing, I don't know why. It looks like a toy, whatever the fuck you do. And it's sort of and I painted it, repainted it, and repainted it. And at some point, and by then, like Oliver had pushed the printer, I mean, like, we're going to get a few extra days. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to get this fucking thing right. And I made a model. I tried to take a picture of the model and tried to get it in there and then paint it. It looks like a toy. And at some point, I just went, can we just go really close on her face? So I have the original right there. And I mean, I'll give it away or something once I get the Po-2 to look like a fucking thing one could fly in instead of a paper plane. But it's an odd thing. It's a very sort of, it's like, it's got all of the wires and everything to keep it together, and it's very boxy in a sort of odd way, and it doesn't have any of the sort of lovely curves that you're used to. And I don't know why it's so hard, but I do feel very bad for having had Paddy draw it 9 million times. So sorry about that, Patrick. That was, I wish I could say we were not going to do it again, but I mean, given the opportunity, we will do it again. But I am sorry though.
You're sorry, but you're not that sorry.
Slightly sorry. Which I don't even know. Like, but it's the thing is, the fact that it is so sort of rickety is sort of part of the thing, right? It's part of the thing that makes them so amazing. Because if they had any sort of equipment or like anything to give them an edge, but they got like ill-fitting uniforms, the worst planes. They had a few planes, and then whenever they got a new one, that the oldest pilots would get that one, and the shit plane would get to the newest pilots. So you were always sort of fucked. And then, like, when it's winter and the nights are long, it's like 14 missions a night. Like, it's an insane thing when you fly a paper plane that can be shot down by, a pistol.
Mm.
But then that was sort of the point too, like, because you can just patch it if you were shot. You can just sort of like add a bit of fabric and glue.
Easy to fall apart, but easy to fix back up for the exact same reason.
What's quite nice is obviously in Battle Action you've got the ongoing Johnny Red story with Garth and Keith Burns, and then you backup is kind of the wrong word, but like a second one and done story of which is
you just said it now, so that's what we're going to call it now, the backup.
Okay. All right, yeah, backup. Second fiddle. There we go.
The extra story, the one you read if you have the time.
I do not endorse these opinions. I wouldn't say that. But what I enjoyed about this issue, and this is something that happens in pretty much all issues of Battle Action, but particularly acutely in this one, is the high Nazi body count, which I feel even for Battle Action is right up there, and I do endorse that view.
I mean, it feels like a very nice. It's an excellent time to be sort of killing Nazis, since we seem to be sort of iffy about who were the bad guys apparently. So we're just trying to make sure that people know that the Nazis were bad. You know, the heroes are killing them. Therefore, thus, they were the baddies.
It's an odd thing, having grown up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah.
That it is a point that requires some kind of reiteration or
It is a fascinating
forceful.
thing, especially when like, we're not going to get much into this, but it's just like all of those people were watching all of the documentaries all the time, and you never met a guy over the age of 65 who didn't have like World War II documentaries as part of his personality, right? And it's like, did you miss the point the entire time? Like, what?
Oh, sink
Well, I
into
mean-
your chair deeper.
Like who? Like, I have no moral high ground here. Are you kidding me?
It was, so I work from home, but my wife does a few days in the office. So when she's at home, we'll at lunchtime we'll probably watch a bit of TV, like a quiz show or something. But when she's not here, I get free reign to watch what I want. And I think I'd gone out for the night, and she clicked onto Netflix, and it was logged in onto my profile, and it came up with a continue watching thing. And not only was it all World War II documentaries, like that I like having on in the background while I'm doing something else. What I just finished watching was Hitler's secret sex life.
What?
Was the most preposterous. The whole thing was just. I mean, what was amazing about it, and I don't recommend it, but I also do recommend it if you want to.
Did they
be a
get
god.
into the whole one ball thing?
No, well, okay. So
Okay.
that's a myth. Just as an aside, when Sniper Elite V2, which was the second Sniper Elite game that Rebellion produced, I joined the company just before that came out. So and I helped with some of the publicity for it. But I remember very vividly, because for those who haven't played Sniper Elite, V2, I think it was, introduced the X-ray kill cam. So if you do a particularly good shot, it will show in slow motion an X-ray the brain or the guts or the liver or the eyeball kind of exploding in slow motion. It's the USP of the game. And it was decided that there would be, on the list of body parts, there would also be testicles, so you can shoot Nazis in the balls, which is, obviously,
of course, yeah,
a vital
Perfect.
public
selling
service.
point.
And I was in the meeting where the debate occurred, because one of the DLCs was Kill Hitler. So there was actually a meeting where a bunch of grown men sat in a room and to decide how many balls Hitler had.
Actually, yeah, that was the meeting.
Two, yeah.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be funny if we only gave him one, and blah 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 blah. But anyway,
so was it? Are there any highlights?
Yeah, what is the
I will
secret
say that
sex life of
Hitler
Hitler?
just-
Like,
seems like a really boring fuck.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's pure conjecture. So basically, goes he was a bit of a fucked up individual, which of course he was. But as the series goes on, it's like maybe 4 or 5 episodes. The number of experts, and it's very important that those listening to this, not watching it, understand that I'm doing air quotes very heavily around the word experts, get fewer and fewer and fewer, until basically the last episode is one guy who clearly was quite willing to say whatever the producers wanted him to say.
Right. Excellent.
oh boy,
But
that's helpful.
I find Hitler to be sort of the least interesting part of the Second World War, but I do find it fascinating that we keep being like, Hitler's dogs, what can you tell us? Like, it's just could you just stop with that nonsense? I don't fucking know, but it is a Like the thing is, like I fall asleep to Max Hastings books. I've read
Oh,
them,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I got the audiobook, and I just keep listening to them. And sometimes, like I have children who sometimes come into the room at the wrong time. See, there we are. That is a good one. They're all good. That's the problem. And it is like it's just sort of reassuring, droning.
Who's narrating those?
I don't know. Someone. Do you know?
No, well, the thing is, for those who are listening, I'm holding up a copy of Inferno: The World at War, 1939 to 1945, by Max Hastings, and it's always to hand because it keeps the door open when it's windy.
That really is a door stopper of a book.
Yeah, 100. Like you could kill a man with this thing. But the reason I have it is because Garth Ennis had given me a copy of Max Hastings' book about the Churchill war years, which it's a good book. It's a good book, and but it was like 400-500 pages. I don't have a lot of time for reading for pleasure, and so I was on holiday, and I mainlined the entire thing. Like it took me a week to chew my way through it. Fantastic. And I said, thanks very much. Really enjoyed that. And he was like, oh, brilliant. Really great to hear that. You coming to the pub next week? I went, yeah. I'll meet you there. And Oliver Pickles and I were at the pub in London, and we saw Garth walking towards us. And I was like, what has he got behind his back? And he pulled out this bloody thing.
It's beautiful. It's fucking great.
And so, I very much sympathize with Sisyphus.
The funny thing is, I think he has a similar story about you that I've heard at some point where he's asking you to be like, where would I start to get into whatever the fuck? And then you're like, here are the 9 million pages you need to read to get a basic understanding of.
You never, ever ask Molch-R for a book recommendation, ever, on any subject.
It was specifically about the English Civil War as well.
Oh, God.
It's like, how much
do you have?
The thing is, I'm not sure I agree, because at some point during the pandemic, I was sort of spiraling, and I kept asking people, like, what should I read? I need to read something. And Molch-R was one of the few people who had his head on straight, and delivered a couple of golden, beautiful things that kept my attention.
For a face like that, Chloe, I'm very level-headed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's like in my head, like you're one of the few, but I realized like you can't trust people with books anymore. When you go to Goodreads, like people they've lost their minds. Like it's just fairy porn and dinosaur sex I saw the other day.
Hey, that's a perfectly legitimate subgenre.
Yeah.
That was Hitler's secret sex life, actually.
he loved the Tyrannosaurus Rex going at it.
See, I have
there's got to be someone else there because it's only got tiny hands.
What?
Is this good, Michael?
This is quality stuff we're bringing week after week.
You know what? To all the people who've messaged or commented over the last few weeks saying, I'm really, really enjoying In Orbit. Keep up the good work. I hope you're eating your words right
We're
now.
here to fuck that up.
I'm so sorry.
Right now.
It's just... I'm just saying, there is a sort of... there is apparently a whole... book talk? They've lost their minds, right? And I saw a TikTok the other day that was like... It was a woman, and she was just like, when you picture a dragon cock, like, are you picturing like, or are you picturing, and she pulled up like a urn, or this. And it's like Midwestern, 47 years old. That's the TikTok. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? How did you get here? But we're here. That's the point. And I realized, because I have this great, Steve White, who the battle people, they're so good. I have the most beautiful like dinosaur drawing. It's a Panzer dinosaurs that he did, and I was like, maybe Steve could do some dinosaur porn for us. Maybe that's where the money is. I don't know. Listen, I'm sorry.
So, Battle Action issue 8.
Wait, Get it back, Michael. Recover. Come on.
I am a professional. I do this for a living, and that's fine. That's definitely a choice I've made. But anyway, aside from dinosaur porn and dragon cocks and all this, that, and the other, I haven't got any. Have you got any questions, Chloe? I haven't got any more questions.
Well, I was we've got a little bit off track, but it's a good track to be on. Why war comics for you? Like, because you said that you've had an interest in them for a really, really long time. And why war comics in particular? What's the draw for you with those?
Well, I think the military history is such a it's just an endless sort of treasure trove of good stories in many ways, and I think sort of the aircraft and everything, it started with just building models. I love doing that. And it was just and it was one of those things that I like. I could spend hours making models and then go watch people who had the ones that you can fly, which if you look behind me here, I now
Oh,
have,
wow.
because
Hanging from your ceiling, no less.
yes, of course, because well, I have the Spitfire on the wall there because I'm scared it'll be damaged. That the other one is just like it's like a practice plane because the Spitfire is really hard to fly. Anyway, love them, right? And I started reading at some point. I had like a moment when I was like 10, 11, when I was just the most pretentious little cunt. And I was just like, I was really like, no, I'm going to get into the greats, you know? And it turns out they're really great, though. Like, they are really good.
Yeah.
And I read All Quiet on the Western Front, and I had that, the feeling of like, this was the first war. Like, how did we do it again? Like, it's all here, though. Like, why? Like, how could we have done it again when we knew how bad it was? You know what I mean? And then I just kept reading, and it turns out like comics are, visually magical, especially the British ones. So I had access to whatever was translated into Norwegian, but the moment I could start reading English with any sort of confidence, I would go to the local thrift store and just pick up anything that looked nice. And I didn't know what it was. Like, and I always bought 2000 AD when I can get it, just because the covers were just like, they were like nothing else. Um, and the war comics were just because I love them, but I never read like one entire story in one setting. It was just like a little piece here and another piece there, and it felt like you were working for something, to try to sort of piece everything together. And therein comes the pirating, because I couldn't for a while there, but I was also a nerd, so I knew how to do those things. But yeah, I think it was sort of like, I like the history. I like there is something to getting like the good absurdity of a good war story. And I think a lot of people fail because they take it so seriously in a way, like whenever you do like a war stories. But the comics didn't. And I think the best. I think any, like, if you're going to depict war in any way, you have to sort of take into account that these were like young boys for the most part fucking around, and then not quite realizing how serious it was what they were doing. And there is a level of absurdity there that I think it comes across very well on the comic page, and not as much in Masters of the Air.
Yeah. Well, Masters of the Air.
Because you're in this comic with Garth, who is the past master of war comics. He's the guy that really has. They've not just formed a major chunk of his career, but also, as he goes into in some detail in the short essay that's in this issue, because Battle has just celebrated its 50th anniversary. It's a particular way of storytelling, and you are dealing with historical things. You're doing fictional stories set in historical periods, with real people, and he's very, very good at it. Did you kind of have to block him out a little bit, or was the way that he does them an inspiration? Let's put it that way.
Well, I think I don't know. I don't think I know how to write any other way than I know how to write anyway. But I do find that Garth's war stories are probably the best comics like in the world. I don't know, like they're just the best. And I do enjoy the sort of the immense sort of wealth of knowledge that he has to a point, to a ridiculous point, like to the absolutely like we were on an email thread discussing Kelly's heroes, and because someone had made like a little model of Kelly's heroes with a, I think it's a T-30, like the tank is in the background, and Garth is like, well, actually, that is the historically correct version. It's not the movie correct version. Like it's just you just want to. And I do find it fascinating, like in battle action, because there are some, like the Night Witches, they didn't have radios, they didn't have parachutes. There are some things like I think we added the machine gun. I don't think that the one like the second one, that's not in the original, but it is in the battle action one. Therefore, so we're not like historically accurate, we're battle action accurate, which is a sort of Garthian thing, you know. Like to like very specifically get it battle action historically correct. But I do find like it is, I don't think we would have been here without Garth, and I think like I was added to like a battle action Facebook group the other day, which was a boost to the ego, I will say, because they were saying very nice things about my cover, which is lovely. And there is so much love for this comic, and then people have read it basically their entire lives, and I find there's I sort of love that it's back. I love that like he managed to get it back there, and I'm so happy that I get to be a part of it.
Well, I mean, what a wonderful point to finish on.
Yeah.
Well, sure,
it's beautiful and optimistic, something that we rarely end on here.
Like we can, if we keep going for another 5 minutes, I'm sure we can take a turn.
I have absolutely no doubt of that whatsoever.
We'll make it back to fairy porn and dragon cock if we give it 30 more seconds.
We have been on a journey together over the last half an hour. I think that's important to acknowledge. That
never got to the proper details of Hitler's sex life either. The 5 episodes of Hitler's sex life.
I mean, like I said, I had that on in the background while I was doing some housework.
You did.
But yes, Hitler's Secret Sex Life, not recommended. Battle Action issue 8, and the whole of the 10 issues of Battle Action, very much recommended. Thank you very much, Torunn, for chatting away to us and taking us places where I don't think we could have predicted in a million years on this episode.
It's been a delight.
Good, wonderful. Well, you can get Battle Action number 8 from all good thrill providers, as well as the 2000 AD web shop and apps, the Treasury of British Comics web shop as well. And you can get a bundle of all 10 issues, or a discounted bundle of the first 5, and no doubt there'll be a discounted bundle of the last 5 as well. Make sure you grab some of the previous Battle Action collections, a couple of volumes of those, which are available from our web shop and all good bookshops. We shall be back in 7 days' time, Earthlets, for more from the Galaxy's Greatest Podcast. In the meantime, it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Chloe.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from Torunn.
Bye, guys.
We'll see you next time, Earthlets, Splunding Verthrig.
Get 2000 AD now. Get to.
Well, thanks for joining us on In Orbit every Wednesday, Earthlets. Make sure you like and subscribe, and go along to 2000 AD, where you'll be able to subscribe to 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine. Sign up to our newsletter, and you'll get hundreds of pages of free comics to download. And download the app for your Apple and Android devices. Now, don't forget, Earthlets, this is the 2000 AD universe. We just live in it.